Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome to another Caster Chronicles spoiler talk. So this one's going to be a little bit longer than the ones following this. I had done one last week going over all the spoiled cards for the starter deck, and so now we're in the normal booster box spoiled cards that we'll be going through, and sort of backed up just because I had find time to do it and all that different things, and I decided to sort of consolidate all the starter deck cards into one place and different things like that. But yeah, so we'll go ahead and get into it. So first up, we have our caster, Magus. Her tap ability is you draw a card if an enemy servant hasn't attacked this turn. The English is a little weird. It says if an enemy servant haven't attacked this turn. Hopefully that's fixed by the time it gets out. Play this ability only during your opponent's phase. So for some reason your opponent doesn't have any servants on the field, or you're able to destroy them as they come in, you get to tap her and basically get a free draw card. It works well, I'd assume, early game, but I guess late game if you have field wipes and different things like that. I don't know if it's that great though. Next we have Burkes Price. It's destroy target enemy servant if it hasn't attacked this turn. Play this ability only during your opponent's end phase. So we got some end phase stuff, so it makes me think that there's probably a chant or something like that maybe prevents your opponent from attacking. I know we saw some cards, or at least one card that gave your opponent slow start, so maybe just constantly doing things like that would help to get a lot of these abilities off, especially if you had a bunch of these casters out and you're able to stall your opponent out and not use any of them for your ether, and then you just tap all of them and get a whole bunch of effects at the end of the turn. Next is Clarice Morita. Her ability is discard a caster, target allied yokai gains double corrupt until end of turn. That's pretty cool. I like things that discard a caster, because sometimes you just get casters in your hand that you don't need, or that are duplicates that you don't necessarily get an advantage of putting face down, different things like that. Not to mention there's a couple casters that have effects once they're in the graveyard, so it's nice to have something that helps with that. And double corrupt is nice, especially when you can do it in response. So if your attack goes through and then you just do that in response to your attack going through and you get that extra orb, it's kind of nice. Next is Cheryl Thomas. So this one tap, as long as there are less allied servants than enemy servants, allied servants cannot be attacked until end of turn. If reverse servants can't be attacked, the player may be attacked instead. So basically, it makes it so you can protect your servants. You know, it has the added not as good effect where if you have a reverse servant, suddenly they can basically fly over it and attack your orbs directly. But it helps especially for field flooding decks. Decks like the orange one that I run that has a lot of low cost sweets, like the 500 zero cookie and different things like that die super easily because it has zero defense. So being able to make them to survive just one extra turn, obviously this works in other decks as well, but as an example, is really helpful. And the fact that that's simply a tap ability, I think is extremely good because it's situational. You don't have to worry about necessarily having the ether to play like a chant, although you have to keep her on tap, but it's still really cool, I think. I'm noticing that, and there's especially the card at the end here, but a lot of these cards seem a lot more provocative than the last set. Pretty interesting. But this one, another caster once again. Search your deck for a caster with the same name as target caster in an enemy graveyard. Reveal it and put it into your hand, then shuffle your deck. So that's an interesting one. I'm not quite sure what the end game is with that, like what the benefit is of that. If maybe there's decks that you're just assuming your enemy player is playing a lot of specific types of casters that you're going to be running. I don't know. That was a weird one. Maybe you guys can let me know. Next is Afternoon Remi. So this is whenever an allied suites enters the field, put this card from your graveyard into your hand. So this is awesome. So I really wanted some orange support to help with these sort of orange decks that I love. And so this is really awesome. So it helps with discard effects when you're, like I said before, cards that you have to discard a caster for. There's a lot of decks now that are very discard friendly, so I'm having to discard cards. So having her in my hand to be able to sacrifice and then just super easily being able to put it from my graveyard back into my hand is really cool. So I really like that card. Next is Serenity Sonia. Her tap ability is play an enter ability of target allied Tengu. So that's really awesome. So Tengus are really strong servants as is. So being able to tap a caster just to trigger their enter again, which is usually their awesome really cool effect is their enter ability is potentially super strong. So I'm pretty excited to see the type of combos that could be seen with that. Next is Hululu. Her type ability is discard a caster. Once again, you may pay 2 less to play your next Conjurer this turn. This cost cannot be reduced lower than 1. That's really cool in my opinion. I mean, technically, it only reduces it by 1 if you think about it, because you're tapping her in order to do the effect. So you're only reducing it by 1 cost, but it's still pretty cool, I think. Every little bit counts. And I really like the artwork on this one too. Next is Scrounge, a 3-cost Conjure. This one has Break, which is nice, and it also has Earnest as the subtype, and you get to put a card from your hand into an allied orb zone face down as an orb. So it's nice to see more of these type of cards coming in to help with that yellow deck sort of weird sort of ability of just populating your orb zone constantly. So I really like that, and especially the fact that it has Break really makes it an actual genuinely decent card. Next we have Aqua Cronus. So draw a card if you have less cards in your hand than your opponent. So that's a pretty straightforward card. It really gives you draw power for blue, so it's really nice. I like it. Next is Tart Chantilly. So as long as this card is in your graveyard, you may pay 1 less to play Tengu cards. Cannot be reduced lower than 1. Now, I assume it does, but I'm not 100% sure. But I assume if you have multiple of these in your graveyard, then they keep stacking for 1 less, because it doesn't say it doesn't stack. So that's pretty cool. And once again, helps with that discard I had talked about. We have already have 2 casters that involve discarding other casters. There's other effects both your opponent does to you and that you can do yourself to discard. And so especially inside of orange, it's really easy to do stuff like that. So being able to do that and then power up Tengu cards and do an orange yellow deck like I have my orange yellow deck I've done. And so being able to combine those and do this cool little Tengu combo is going to be awesome. Speaking of Tengus, we have Yakushi Tengu 48. So it's a 4-cost orange servant. So we got an orange Tengu. That's awesome. It's a 1,000,000 with Break. At the end of turn, put this card on the bottom of its owner's deck. The enter ability is look at target enemy orb, then return it. If this card is put into the field without being played from your hand, corrupt that enemy orb instead. So that's really awesome. We've already seen several ways to put cards into the field without playing them from your hand. And so this just helps with, if you're able to do that, or just have it be broke from your orb zone. If you get the break effect that's still entering the field outside of your hand, then you just get a free corruption, which is really awesome. And because it goes back into your deck, you are able to keep cycling that enter effect. And can you imagine having that enter effect and then responding to that enter effect by tapping your yellow caster to get that enter effect again? So you essentially get to corrupt 2 enemy orbs possibly just from her entering the field, not including if you're able to actually attack with her and corrupt an orb on top of that. So I really like it. We got Riku Boo Tengu 48, another 4-cost. This one's dark with 1,000,000 and Break as well. End of turn, put out the bottom of its owner's deck. And its enter ability is rest target servant. And then if it was put in the field without playing from your hand, you destroy it instead. So you guys are sort of seeing a pattern here. I really like this one. I don't like it as much as the orange one. I think the orange one is a lot cooler. But this is still a really great effect. Destruction is always great. Next we have Violet Reis. Target allied Tengu gains Hubris till end of turn. So this once again helps with those Tengu craziness. So Tengus are already really strong servants as they are. In my opinion, they were some of the stronger, if not strongest servants we had seen before. So we're just getting all these stacked effects for them. The downside of Tengus before was they didn't really have any combo effects. So they were just sort of one-offs that lost to things that stacked and comboed well with each other instead of other decks. So now we're starting to see this sort of synergy and giving something hubris, like I mentioned before. This would work with, say you broke the orange Tangu 48 out, you corrupt an orb, tap a yellow, corrupt another orb, and then you tap this to give it hubris so it can swing over reverse servants, swing in with that to corrupt another orb, different things like that. Next we have Garen Butane Tengu 48. So this is a 5-cost red servant with 3,000 and 3,000. This one's interesting because the subtype isn't actually Tengu, the subtype is Tengui. I don't know if it's interesting. I don't know if it was like that before. I actually didn't pay attention. But at end of turn, goes bottom of your deck. All Tengu you control gain enter, corrupt target orb. So I guess it is technically different. That way it doesn't trigger itself and different things like that. That's pretty good, because imagine having that onto your field. And gonna keep going back to the orange one. Orange one comes in from your break zone, corrupts an orb, tap a yellow, corrupt another orb. Its enter effect is you corrupt another orb on top of that, and so you've corrupted 3 orbs potentially on top on a enter effect of a break. So that's pretty awesome. Next we have Ruby, and not from the really awesome anime that that Rooster Teeth does, but still Ruby with a little cute tiny fox on it. I love the little fox thing. I don't know if it's a fox. I don't know what that is, but it's adorable. Target allied Tengu gains 1,000 attack to end of turn, so that's awesome. I guess I'm going to be making a Tengu deck when the next set comes out. Next is Linerite. Draw a card if an enemy player played an enter ability this turn. So this a lot of enter abilities, including giving things that don't have enter abilities. So this is probably a good card to run in almost all blue decks, because you're going to guarantee that card draw as long as she's untapped. Next is Baked Rice Cake. 1 costs blue servant, 0/500, and it's a sweets. So we have a blue sweets, so that's pretty awesome. It has last words, so when it dies you gain control of target enemy servant with a cost of 1, and so you just permanently gain control of it. That's pretty good, I think, for a 1 cost servant. Yeah, and it's a sweets. Next is Paria Marito. So destroy target reversed enemy servant if an allied servant corrupted an enemy orb this turn. So if you figured out a way to corrupt an enemy orb without with going through the reverse servant, then you get to destroy said servant. So you can do that via hubris. You can do it by having just corrupt orb effects from chance or one of the Tengu we talked about, different things like that. So this is going to be extremely useful inside of those Tengu decks, but also inside of other decks as well. Next, going with the trend of this was a lot more risque set than before, is Casil of Charity. So this is a 7 cost servant with 5,000 attack and 3,000 defense. She's an angel and earnest with double corrupt and DCT of 1, which is whenever this card attacks, put a card from your hand into an allied orb zone face down as an orb. So that's really cool, and I really like that they're having cards like this that synergize with the starter deck. So starter deck isn't just standing on its own. It looks like they're just doing what they're doing with Force of Will, where it just all works in tandem. If you guys are curious of what Earnest and DCT and all that is, check out my previous spoiler video last week that went over the entire starter deck. Next is Sweets Buffet, an orange 4-cost barrier. So whenever an allied Sweets enters the field, search your deck for Sweets, reveal it and put it to your hand, then shuffle your deck. So if you're running a deck like my orange one, where you're constantly every single turn putting a Sweets into the field, then this could potentially be good. So you're constantly populating your hand with more Sweets and playing them, and if they get put in the bottom of your deck or anything like that, you're able to still fish them out on top of your other search effects. The 4 cost is a little bit high, which kind of sucks. I don't know if I would personally run it. I'm not a big fan of a lot of barriers in this game so far, although there are some really good ones. It just doesn't appeal to me. But if you're running an orange deck, this is definitely one to look into. Speaking of orange, we have Steel Interlay. Her enter effect, or she has an enter effect. So that's interesting. I think that's the first enter effect we've seen for a caster. You search your deck for Sweets and put it into your hand. That's really good, actually. That's really awesome. Definitely going to be putting a whole lot of those into my orange deck. Being able just to play caster and get an effect just by doing the thing you were going to do anyways, and it's just you get to search your deck for any suite you want and with no limitations. That's really good in my opinion. Next we have Skull's Moffatt, or however you say that. Dark caster, tap, draw a card if an allied servant corrupted an enemy orb this turn. So that applies also for not only just swinging in and corrupting an orb, but also with like Tengu 48's enter effect, it counts as a servant corrupting an enemy orb and different things like that. So that could prove to actually be pretty useful as far as draw power goes and consistency. Next we have Sadistic Queen, a 4-cost dark servant with 3,000 attack and 0 defense. It's a yokai, and it has Hubris just passively. So that's really good, especially later game, which is what you would play this at 4 cost. Just being able to play it and then screening over everything to corrupt some orbs could prove to be very useful. Next is Goblin Moneylender. So this is a 2 cost servant, 3,000, 3,000, enter effect. Play rock, paper, scissors with target enemy player. The winning, another typo, but the winner, this says the winning, but the winner draws 2 cards. So that's pretty interesting. And last words, play rock, paper, scissors with target enemy player. The loser discards 3 cards. That's really funny, I think. So it's a 2 cost, 3,000, 3,000. So just looking at the stats alone, that's really great. Early game card to have. But the rock, paper, scissors thing is pretty hilarious, I think. And actually has some pretty great rewards and consequences. It's not just like a throwaway thing. So I would probably play that just for the heck of it in my yellow deck. And I also like the wording, target opponent, so it's a future proofing for things like 2v2 and stuff like that, which is kind of cool. But yeah, that's pretty hilarious. I love that. And lastly, we have Taraji Anazui. A tap, cancel target ability of an allied cryptid. So that's pretty interesting. So like, for example, the previous card is a cryptid. For the subtype, so you could cancel its enter ability or its last words ability for playing rock, paper, scissors if you don't want to take that risk, if you'd rather just have a nice 2 cost without any worry and different things like that. Both of them are in yellow, so they work in tandem with each other. And that also just works really well with those goblin cards in general, assuming some of them are cryptids. I'm actually not sure which ones are and aren't. But goblins usually have really cool stats and everything like that, but sort of weird effects that don't always benefit you. So having the option to cancel said effect could prove to be really awesome. So I actually really like how that works, and it's actually really nice artwork for that one I like too. But yeah, that's all for this week. I mean, this was actually past like 2 weeks worth of spoilers, but this will be weekly, so tune in next week for the next week of spoilers up until the set comes out, and then we'll have our box opening and all that. But yeah, let me know what you guys think and what your favorite cards were from the spoiled cards so far. Mine obviously are any of the sweets, orange sweets, and the orange Tengu 48. I love all of those. But yeah, we'll see you guys next time.